I have always loved the sound of falling snow. It's hard to explain to people who don't feel it the same way. Snow doesn't just change how the world looks, it changes how it sounds, how it feels, how it breathes. Everything becomes quieter, softer, slower. Even familiar places feel distant and unreal, like you've stepped into a memory instead of a moment. Growing up, snowfall always felt rare, even though it happened every winter. Maybe that's why it always felt special to me, like something you weren't supposed to take for granted. When snow falls at night, especially, it feels like the world is letting you see something private. I'm not the adventurous type. I don't hike for fun, I don't camp, and I don't go looking for thrills in the wilderness. But snow does something to me. When it starts falling, I get this urge to be outside, to witness it instead of watching it through a window. It's not logical. It's not planned. It's more like a pull, a quiet demand I feel deep in my chest. I've learned not to question it too much. That urge is the reason I'm telling this story. I live in a wooded area, not the kind of place people imagine when they think of forests in isolation, but still close enough that dense trees surround the town. There are neighborhoods, paved roads, and streetlights, but if you drive just 5 or 10 minutes in any direction, you're surrounded by woods. There are trails people hike during the day, places families go during fall to see the leaves change. At night, though, those trails are usually empty. People here respect the woods, or maybe they fear them. That night, I didn't have work the next day. I remember that clearly because I wouldn't have gone out otherwise. I was slightly hungover, the dull kind of headache that lingers after a night of bad decisions and cheap drinks. It must have been a Saturday because I remember thinking how grateful I was that I didn't have to be anywhere the next morning. I also remember being annoyed earlier that evening because it wasn't supposed to snow. I check the weather obsessively during winter. Snowstorms can shut everything down where I live, and I like knowing what to expect. So when it started snowing, it caught me completely off guard. I was sitting in my room reading, half paying attention, when I noticed how quiet it suddenly became. At first, I didn't realize why. Then I looked out the window. Snow was already falling heavily, thick flakes drifting down under the glow of the streetlights. The ground was already dusted white. It was beautiful. Too beautiful to ignore. I didn't think. I didn't weigh pros and cons. I just grabbed my keys, put on my boots and jacket, and left. The drive to the hiking trail took about 10 minutes. The roads were empty, the snow muffling even the sound of my tires. When I pulled into the small gravel parking lot, my car was the only one there. That wasn't unusual. At night, especially during snowfall, people stayed home. I shut off the engine and sat there for a moment, listening. The silence felt heavy, like something pressing against my ears. When I stepped out of the car, the cold hit me immediately. The kind of cold that stings your nose and makes every breath feel sharp. Snowflakes landed on my jacket and melted slowly. I stood there longer than I probably should have, just taking it in. The trail entrance was barely visible, the path already starting to disappear under fresh snow. Eventually, I started walking. At first, it was peaceful. My boots crunched softly with every step, the sound dull and muted. The trees loomed on either side of the trail, their branches heavy with snow. The deeper I went, the darker it became. The trail wasn't lit, but the snow reflected enough light. From the sky that I could still see, everything felt unreal, like I was walking through a painting. I didn't have a destination. I just walked, letting the silence wash over me. Time felt strange out there. I couldn't tell how long I'd been walking until I checked my phone and realized it had been about 20 minutes. That's when I stopped. I don't know why I stopped. There was no sudden noise, no movement, no conscious thought that made me pause. I just did. I stood completely still, listening. The snow continued to fall, soft and relentless. My breathing sounded loud in my own ears. That's when I heard it. At first I thought it was my imagination. The woods play tricks on you. Wind, branches shifting, distant sounds echoing in strange ways. But this wasn't like that. It was clear. It was unmistakable. A child's voice. Hi. The word itself wasn't threatening. If anything, it was casual, almost friendly. But hearing it there, in the middle of the woods, at night, sent a wave of cold fear through my body that had nothing to do with the temperature. My heart started pounding instantly. I didn't respond. I turned slowly, scanning the trees. There was no movement, no shape that looked like a person. The voice hadn't sounded close, but it hadn't sounded far either. It felt like it came from everywhere. At once, I told myself it had to be a prank. Or maybe I misheard. Maybe it was a bird, or the wind, or my brain filling in gaps. But then it happened again. Hi. Same voice. Same tone. That's when panic started to creep in. Children don't wander the woods alone at night during a snowstorm. That fact alone made my stomach twist. I decided immediately that I needed to leave. I turned back toward the direction I'd come from and started walking faster. Then the voice spoke again. Up here. Silly. I froze. Something about the way it said that casual, almost amused made my skin crawl. Slowly, I tilted my head. Upward. That's when I saw him. A little boy was sitting on a tree branch high above the ground, maybe 20 feet up. He looked around 9 years old. He was dressed for the cold, wearing a winter jacket, gloves, and a hat. His legs dangled freely. As he smiled down at me, seeing him should have made me feel better. It should have reassured me that this was real, that there was a logical explanation. Instead, something felt deeply wrong. His smile was too wide, stretching across his face in a way that didn't quite look natural. His eyes were fixed on me. Unblinking, I took a step closer, never taking my eyes off him. "What are you doing up there?" I asked, trying to keep my voice calm. He didn't answer right away. He just tilted his head slightly, still smiling. That's when I noticed the snow around the tree. There were no footprints. None at all. The ground was pristine, untouched except for my own tracks leading up the trail. That realization hit me hard. Snow had been falling heavily for at least 45 minutes by that point. If he had climbed the tree after it started snowing, there would have been footprints. If he'd been there before, that meant he had been sitting alone in the dark woods in freezing temperatures for nearly an hour. The tree itself made it worse. It was straight, tall, and bare near the bottom. There were no low branches, no easy way to climb it. Even an adult would struggle. A 9-year-old child shouldn't have been able to get up there at all. I asked him how he got up there. He laughed softly and waved his hand. "It's a secret." Something in my gut screamed at me to leave. Every instinct I had was telling me this was wrong. I took a step back, considering calling the police. But before I could say anything else, the boy stood up on the branch. "What?" "This," he said. I barely had time to react before he leaned backward and fell. He didn't slip. He didn't lose his balance. He leaned back deliberately, like someone falling into a bed. His body dropped straight down, disappearing behind the trunk. I screamed. The sound he made when he hit the ground was sickening. A dull, heavy thud that echoed through the woods. I ran forward in shock, my heart racing, my mind already trying to process what I was about to see. But when I reached the base of the tree, there was no broken body. The boy stood up like nothing had happened. He brushed snow off his jacket, looked at me, and laughed. Not a normal laugh. It was sharp, high-pitched, and full of something cruel. Then he ran. I don't know why I chased him. Fear should have sent me running in the opposite direction. But something else took over. Maybe shock. Maybe disbelief. Maybe some stupid instinct that told me I needed answers. I followed his footprints as he darted between trees, his laughter echoing all around me. It didn't sound like it was coming from one direction. It sounded like the woods themselves were laughing. As I ran past one of the trees, something slammed into my back. I was knocked off my feet and face first into the snow. Before I could react, weight pressed down on me. Small hands clawed at my neck and shoulders with shocking strength. It was the boy. He was on top of me, screaming not in fear, but in rage. His fingernails dug into my skin, tearing through my jacket, burning lines across my neck. I felt warm, blood soaking into my collar. I tried to push him off, but he was impossibly strong. I thought I was going to die there. Somehow adrenaline kicked in. I twisted, grabbed him, and threw him over my shoulder. He hit the ground hard, but it didn't slow him down. He popped back up, laughed again, and disappeared into the trees. This time, I didn't chase him. I collapsed where I stood, shaking uncontrollably. My hands were slick with blood. I wrapped my hat around my neck, pressing hard, trying to stop the bleeding. My chest felt tight. I couldn't breathe properly. I was having a full-blown panic attack. I don't remember much after that. The next clear memory I have is waking up in an ambulance. Bright lights above me, someone asking me questions I couldn't answer properly. Later, the police questioned me over and over again. They searched the trail, followed my footprints. They only found one set, mine. There were no other tracks, no signs of a child, no evidence anyone else had ever been there. I went back days later, hoping to find something that would prove it was real. I found nothing, but I still hear laughter sometimes when it snows, and I don't walk those trails anymore.